Hello and welcome back to the channel and another one of our World Cup of Design playthroughs, and this one's one from the main field. We had our first publish was Metatropic with his Sharktooth Rock Club, so I thought we'd leap in and do this one. Now for those of you watching live on Twitch, I've got a little window while kids are eating dinner, so I'm going to do this one now and then hopefully a couple of others later this evening. Now, he's submitted the form. Everyone in the contest should be responding to a form, which just gives judges a bit of an idea of what they're going for. So he says, based a little bit on Wolf Creek, but trying to surf the boundaries between fantasy and realism, always interesting. Some interesting things he's mentioned are he's got manipulated tees, but if we have to choose white, so we'll go white, but we'll look at where the blacks are. And greens, fast default or very fast greens. So we'll stick with default because they're probably in between the two. But appreciate that it could be slightly slower, it could go slightly higher, which is kind of as we expect. So yeah, now played a number of Ali's courses, mainly because there are a number of them. And generally, he does a lot of things really, really well. Main bits that we would suggest probably worth focusing on are almost always the whole designs and the playability stuff. But visuals have always been pretty good. We'll come back to the first tee look in a second. So leaping up into the skies, and saw this from some of the overheads and things in the thread. I really like the plot work that he's done. Like, as you can see, you've got the Sharktooth Rock, I guess kind of makes sense up there. We've got a mixture of some of these rocks and then some of the step rocks. I think some of them fit a little bit better than others. I'm not totally sold on these rocks. I think you have to work really hard to get them to work in line with that step base texture. But it's tough. I do love I'm a sucker for the step look with this brown heavy rough texture. I think it looks really good generally. And I think what you've done nicely is made the kind of the sculpted areas and mountains that you've done look in a similar scale as the backdrop. Often they can look too small. So kudos for getting that about right. It's a really interesting landscape. One thing that does kind of immediately strike me is that I guess you've got a lot of... I guess dynamite has been taken to a lot of this, which would make sense, but it seems like we've got these rocky areas and then the land the holes are on is kind of flat. I like that we've done this. I would like to see a little bit more of that, just looking from up above, like rather than you've put... I guess the difference is when you've got a really cool landscape like this and plot, how can you use that wild terrain as much as possible rather than just putting the hole down in a flat corridor and then raising the land around it, which tends to lead to this cool environment, but maybe the course doesn't necessarily live up to it. We're going to have some comments about tee boxes later, but that's fine. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This is a cool publish. And you've got some really big views. I do think some of these rocks don't necessarily fit. I probably have just stuck with the jagged sculpting. It's really hard to blend them. But it's cool. It's been a while since we had a good desert style course. I guess we had pandas relatively recently. I'm going to talk about bunkers, and there's a few things that do leap out from the flyover, but there's a lot that we like. Yes, the 18th hole with the fountain, always good, and a yacht that can go nowhere. Fair enough. Agreed. Like it's a fun overall look, and you can do lots with it. And then we've got some off-course stuff. Now, I believe he had 2 courses on the go. I played the other one. Having played the other one, I think he released the right one for this. In the look, this has a higher ceiling, but we can judge a bit more afterwards. So we're going to leap back into the first tee and give it a go. Okay. Straight away off the first tee goes to the restaurant. I see. Straight away off the first tee, I feel like there's a lot going on, particularly on the tee box. We don't need all of this stuff. There's just a lot of... Where do you want to direct the player's eye to? Well, you want them looking down here rather than at all of this. And it kind of does the Arctic Fury thing, which works for some people, doesn't really work for me, where it's just like, look at all the shiny 5 yards in front of you. Generally, I'd say Arctic's gotten better at that, but we want to be looking at the stuff down here. Now, we do have a rock in the middle, which, yeah, I can take or leave. I do like the rock work that you've done around here. This stuff blends a little bit better, but that's partly the shadows definitely helping as well. I'm glad Ali's managed to make it into chat. That's great, because I wasn't sure who would be around at this sort of time. We do have a little bit where you're missing heavy rough and like some texturing stuff here. The more you can check this, the better, although that transition's always going to be difficult because you're going light here and then fairway here. Bunker sculpting, I think we can work on this a little bit. If that's it's kind of not really sure whether it wants to be a formalized bunker or I think what you want is that waist area. The planting here looks really good, by the way. Yeah, it looks good. However, I think what you want is that kind of Pine Valley waist area transitioning into more of a formalised bunker. So you probably want to sculpt this as if it's a bunker and then let it get a bit more natural away from it. As it is, very uphill first hole. I really like the uncluttered green site and like the space you've given it behind here. It doesn't need anything more, and this is a really good thing a really good positive to take away. Like, simple done well is good. I kind of feel this is maybe a little bit too binary if we can go either here or here. I think if this bunker's really coming into play, which I expect it does with the elevation change, I'd have lost this. I don't think you need it, because I feel like I'm forced out towards here anyway. Haven't played the game in a while, so tempo is going to be rubbish, which will make this interesting. Okay. Heavy rough, which is fine. Sightline is solid. It's really tough because I've missed the fairway, so I can't really critique it. Yeah, I just love these textures going together. I think they work really nicely. Okay. Green itself, it's kind of either you're on the right tier or you're sloping away from it, but I appreciate this sideways at least. Adds a little more interest. And let's find that front bunker. You can see little bits of the bunker sculpting here where it's gone. Like, this is partly because of the brushes not quite overlapping, and I think we can tidy that up just a little bit. Now, I did mention in the flyover at the start that I had something about the waist bunkers that I was going to be saying. I think the main thing for me is, I'll kind of come back to this as we go, where waist bunkers work really, really well is where they feel like they were natural and the holes were laid around them. And it's kind of similar to the sculpting I mentioned at the top, rather than you've laid down a hole and then the waist bunkers are framing, and then they just work a little less well. A really good example of this is Blue River Dunes back in last game, I think. Not the game before, I can't remember if he paused it. But that idea of it always being there and then adding that interest to holes rather than just framing. They look great, don't get me wrong. But I think it feels like we're on a little bit more of we've laid a hole down and then we've started doing all the framing and things. Okay. We do like Blue River. Like this green, these bunkers are a big departure. Not an unwelcome one necessarily, but they are very different. Matty, can you mute Axel, please? I do really like the planting and the use of grasses that you've gone for. The little sprinkles of green looks really good. I don't know if I'd have planted much up here, or I might have put a couple of sunken trees in there as well. Thanks, Axel. Or Matty, him. Because once you start doing grasses up here, it's kind of a where do you stop? And I think you'd probably be making more sense down at the base and like a couple of the little gullies in here, but not really on the top, and certainly not following all the way along. And once you do start doing it, it's why is there not grass kind of everywhere? So yeah, we'll also say this cart path is really dominating. And I appreciate you probably didn't have anywhere better to go with it. But that's just, it just all feels a little awkward there. The hole itself is interesting. Again, we've split the fairway and put a central hazard somewhere I may not have done. But then again, I think I'd have probably made it a long par 4 if I didn't have the central hazard. I don't mind the green. I do like these bunkers are sculpted really nicely. I don't really have any complaints there. I think we also have slightly variable light rough, which I'm okay with. It kind of feels like it. If you're going to do this, I think you need to give it a little bit more in certain areas and try and make it a bit neater. Just feels a bit wavy, without really needing to be so. Strategically, I've got this side, which gives me a straighter look at this. Or we can go out to the right. Kind of wonder whether just somewhere down the path is probably going to get me a lot of roll. Yeah. Oh, or we bounce into the kind of right path, part of the fairway. Or we land just behind the crazy big stuff. That's fine. Again, really like this stuff. Like the way you've done the natural texture here and like this little bit behind the green. This kind of low profile planting and texturing stuff, really, really good. Okay. Let's just hit a 3-iron somewhere up here. As long as we're in and around, it doesn't really matter too much. Oh. Friendly bouncers. Bunkers look really, really good. There. Like the shaping and sculpting, by far and away, a million miles better than the stuff on hole one. I don't massively love the pin, although it looks better from this angle. From the previous one, it looked like it was kind of breaking. So you can see we've got it breaking this way and that way, which I'm not a massive fan of. It's kind of crowned. It's going off this way and this way, and part of that is the green not really knowing whether it wants to be. I guess it's trying to do a Pinehurst green thing, which is fine as long as they don't all do that. Anywho, not a major critique. Really cool view from up here. I wish I were a bit closer so I could get that view, but that looks great. Good use of green on a high point. You say these greens can go to very fast. That would 168. Yeah, I guess they can. Okay, I'm going to leap into camera view for a second. There is absolutely no reason we need a chair there. It's getting in the way. It's half on a fairway tee box. There's also no reason we need the retaining wall around it and light rough. This just kind of looks a bit messy and it's really unnecessary. It definitely doesn't add anything. I would far rather see this sort of stuff. Just tee box going to the edge and then you get the natural terrain texture in the way you've done it around here. Looks so much better. Yeah, it does, but there's like, I just don't think it adds. It's similar with the fence in front. I would probably be lowering that or just not using it. I don't think you. I guess there's a road down there, but you don't need this bit of fence. You maybe need this one. Especially when the fence, like when I'm playing to this pin, I'm playing directly over a fence. That feels awkward. We're also now into a third bunker style in 3 holes. We've gone waist bunkers, then we've gone the kind of bunkers with a couple of fingers, kind of more traditional, I guess, style on the last. Now we're into pot bunkers. I like the little green sights. I don't feel it should be running off into the back. I'd have probably put a bunker back here and had it working down into that. And then working away from the back bunker, I think would be a neater way of doing it. I do like the whole site. I like the routing and the fact that we've now got a little drop shot par 3, having had an uphill first 2 holes. I think that works well. But yeah, just a few little bits that I don't think work as well. Tough shot though. Like the shallow green works really nicely. Green presents really well. I just really would clean up this view. Like lose all the on tee box items. They're not really adding much for me. Oh, as I always mention at the start, the definition of these playthroughs is to try to be hypercritical. So there's lots of things I like. That should go as a given. But I figure you're in these contests because you want to hear stuff. I have left myself a nasty putt. And the green for a short par 3 is good. Like, there's not a ton of red on it, but it doesn't need it. I don't necessarily love the slope behind it, but I can, like, it's effective. I would have done it differently, but it works. That was a scared putt. Cool. Enjoying this. Okay, now we're back to the waste bunkers, and this is a cooler hole. Yeah, I think it's just understanding why you're doing it, or I don't know. I think Arctic and Crizzy, like, who used to do that as well. It's for people to have stuff to look at, and it can really work. Personally, I find it detracts more than it helps. I would have also lost these 2 cacti, definitely. So I think you open up the sightline, try and show off the fairway itself as much as you possibly can. But things like the road and where this is coming, that's quite nice for framing. Probably, again, I'd just clear out as much of the sightline to the fairway as you can. So, like, moving the fence so it stops about here. Things like that. Now, this tee shot, my question is, what's my safe play? And why would I not just hit driver? Because I'll hit driver and I'll end up in the bunker here, or long. Fine. Or I play 3-wood, which requires me to be absolutely perfect. So that's making me drop back a little bit further. Well, if I drop back further, I'm still, like, with the elevation change, I'm still probably running through into that one or into that one. So I can't play this. So now I'm dropping down to 3-iron. Like, we're looking for a safe play here. 3-iron, I think, is probably a safe play, but given the diagonal nature of this puncture, if I pull it left, which is a fast, that brings that into play as well. And if I get slow, then I'm running out of space this side. I would like to see a little bit more of the space short. If we brought this all back and just made the fairway around about here, and maybe widen one side of this, probably this side. Because I think you've got the bones of a good hole here. Like, I love the green and where it's situated. Like, that green site's really cool. And I like the way the fairway, this bunker cuts in and this bunker cuts in. I think that frames really nicely. This part, I think you got absolutely right. It's how do we get there? And how do we give people options where? Because at the moment, the way I can tell you right now, the way I'm playing this is I'm going to hit driver and take the medicine with whatever happens. Because I can't play 3-wood, don't feel like I can play 5-wood safely. Same with 3-iron. Whereas if you'd given me much more space down here, I'd be really tempted with that front pin. Hit an iron somewhere in here, wedge on. Little bits of missed stuff here. And I think we can probably do a little bit more with the waste bunker stuff. I feel like you probably want some planting here. Or this one feels just it needs a little more. I like the stuff on this side. And the fairway sculpting, I would have also... Like, it's got lumps and bumps. They feel a bit more random than necessarily tied in with the land around them. I really look forward to playing a back pin. I think that really forces you to go for the outside, which is what you want as well. Anyway, let's hit our tee shot into the bunker. Oh no, maybe we won't. Okay. Having found it, I will tell you I do not love this lobe of fairway because it's precisely there for someone like me to... It feels like it's there purely to catch that specific length of drive rather than a more natural fairway shape. To me would seem like following that one line and contour around to here. I would argue I should definitely have been punished for just blindly hitting driver. That said, this is a cool view. Here we go. And we should get our shot back. Hooray. So yeah, for those of you just joining, wow, we spent like 20 minutes on holes 1 to 4. We do tend to get quicker. But I have lots to say, both good and stuff I would tweak. Okie doke. Oh, sort of blind tee shot, much more open space, and the rocks, I guess, are kind of signifying the edges of fairways. The other thing with cart paths is when you're going to use them, they really draw and bring them this close to the tee. they really draw attention to whether they're well sculpted or not. And we need to flatten this a lot more. And it's tough to get them particularly flat, but if you're going to bring them right into the sightline, that's the thing that you're committing to do. Now, I like that we've got a bunkerless hull. And you're giving us a lot of fairway to work with. I'd have probably made this a little bit longer, so I'm interested. Yeah, your other tee. I think this will play so much better from the other tee. But that's fine. Would have probably liked just that bunker on the left to cut in front of the tee a little bit more. Okay. So tee shot's kind of given away a little bit, but that's fine because you can do that when you've gone blind. I mean, I think a really good thing for you to see is just look at the view and look at the tees that you've got and the stuff on them compared to the land around them. It just, there's a lot of stuff congregating in a very small area, and yeah, like I said, the retaining walls don't really work for me. Now, I like the front to back green. That's always fun. I would have probably given this, straightened it up a little bit, or I think you could have had a really cool green if you tucked it just a little bit further around here. Because when you've given up that tee shot, I'd want to do that so that if you're saying basically you can hit anywhere in the fairway, let's put a real premium for hitting on the right hand side and then getting that angle around here to get to a green about there, something like that. But I like the hole generally. The one thing I'd say about this green is it just feels a little bit more manufactured. Particularly, you can see kind of where the flatten or the raise has happened here, and how it's you've kind of got the remnants of that single circle brush you can see going around it. Try and work into that with like the top right brush on page 1, for example. That little one, dig in a little bit, raise up a little bit. Try and make it a touch less. What's the word? Geometric. For lack of a better word. Geometric circles, we know those well. It's a shame that he, oh, go on. Well, there we are. Couldn't really critique the green that much. It's a shame that we still had a sand wedge in for like what's supposed to be quite a long hole. Now, so coming to these waste bunkers then. Here's where I kind of feel your cart path and commitment to them is hurting, because we could have just used this cart path to go back, right? I mean, it's going to go all the way alongside it. Yeah, thanks. But cutting this up makes it seem it's really narrow and cramped, and then you've got to put the planting in, which does look good, but because of the crampedness, it doesn't look as good as it is out here, where you've got a bit more chance to space it out. So I think losing this, also cart paths on the insides of holes, is always a recipe for people to hit down at. But yeah, cool green site. We have tucked a few behind these, and I know I just suggested to do the same again. I guess that's going to be kind of a feature of the course. I do like the green sites you've chosen. One thing, again, that's always worth doing is if you're on PlayStation controller left, like L2 or the trigger, if you hold that in, you get an idea of like really quickly of anything that you're missing from that tee box view. So as you'll see up here, we've got like a bunker just by where the wind direction sign is. You can't really see any of that. So when I zoom into this, I'm like, oh, all of this stuff pops into view that I would like to be able to see. Lots of that is just sculpting this area down like 3-4 feet and just keep checking that view. You don't want to constantly create really elevated tee boxes. So if I loop back to here, what you don't want to do is do the lazy thing, which is raise up the tee box by 10 feet, but lowering gradually this area and like almost having it be kind of a concave shape where the bottom part is around about here makes a real big difference. Yeah, that could work as well. I can understand the cart paths, couldn't you, going for like that kind of Nevada, Arizona, maybe Arizona, Nevada kind of thing. Like you get a lot of resort courses. Oh, there we are. So nearly made the low rough. We're going to take an unplayable because I don't want to judge the hole based on me having a very fast out of nowhere, which I will get in these playthroughs. That happens. Again, kind of similar to the previous green. There's an undulation, but it's a really big raised flat piece of land. I wonder whether we could tie that in a little bit better, some more small undulations. That's slightly more like it. And then we get the little hidden green and we're playing from where we're supposed to. So that's all good. No, it's not as good as the previous sandwich we hit. Disappointing. Now we're back to even. So those of you joining a little bit later, I will hopefully do some more playthroughs this evening. It's only going to be the one right now, just because I've got a small window of time. Unless I get really lucky and my wife will take the kids for a bit longer. Love the green site. Again, the planting situation, once we've gone with this heavy stuff right on top of here, the question becomes, well, why isn't it all out here? And you've got to kind of commit one way or the other. That said, this is my favourite sideline off the tee so far. Still lose the ball washer, we don't. Yeah. But part of the reason why I like it is because there's just a lot of space, and like I think the playable surfaces get their due. So we can see the lighting kind of helps, obviously, but we get to see where the green is. There's not too much clutter around it. It's just nice and, for lack of a better word, clean. Green itself flattish, although running front to back, kind of punch bowlish. I think there's a few green slopes that aren't totally making sense. So we've raised this bit and then everything's dropping down to like a low point here, which has its roots in real world architecture with drainage, etc., etc., which we've talked about in previous contests. But basically you want a good standard practice is making sure that the beads always run off the green at some point. Partly because of that, and even though we're in a sandbox, it's just going to help you sculpt better greens. It does take a long time though. And like even actual punch bowls typically drain. But you can probably get away with it a little bit more on a desert course where it barely ever rains. That is a really solid hole though, which does everything it needed to, and it's not trying to be too flashy or too stellar. It just knows what it needs to be and does that effectively. Okay, these bunkers are going to be a nightmare to sculpt, and the way in which you want to do it is kind of flatten them, but then also at the end lower this side so you can still have it being high but then not dropping off a cliff, because this one's kind of, and you made life harder for yourself still by adding one behind, because then you want this one to be higher so that you can see it from the tee rather than this one being lower, which then makes in turn this become even steeper because that's raised up even higher. But the way you want to do it is basically just work them with the land, and so they're flat but in relation to that land. Now, one of my questions would be, why wouldn't I drive onto this green? Kind of would, because that way I avoid all of this danger, because that's really hard to hit. Down here is probably going to kick me off. It's something you want to be careful with on non-tree lined courses. Yeah. Additionally, I think this is really narrow and tight, and I don't mind that. I think that's quite, probably this bit is slightly too, well, I don't know. I think I'm probably okay with this side. The problem we have is the sculpting, because if I'm using a slightly shorter driver, then I'm being kicked into this bunker really flipping hard, or I can't reach the crest of the hill. Like, to reach and hold the crest of the hill and not run into here, I've got maybe a... Because if I hit here, I'm going into that bunker. So I've got maybe a 3-4 yard window. So it's pretty tight. I actually don't... I think the concept is fine. It's just the way everything's working together with, like, the slope up. This here slopes into those bunkers. I like all of those things. It's just they kind of got to work in moderation together. So then if I go this side, probably holding onto the fairway, it doesn't look to be cambered too much. So that's probably fine. Yeah, I think we'll play this side. I'm not going to try and hit to the other green, even though I normally would. Ah. There we go. As promised. Green site's cool. Really like it. I like that we're kind of looking at the, I guess, tiered plot, for lack of a better word. Another one of those greens where it's kind of everything is telling you that this should be going this way and all the slopes should be working this way. And then we look near the pin and we got those beads going that way. And it's one of those that it's not a major thing, but you'll notice that it just kind of throws players off. And it's something that typically architects will want to have their greens work with the land, so that when you're looking, like, it's a great spot potentially for a Redan style green where everything falls front right to back left. Could work really nicely. But you want to be able to look at an approach shot from 200 yards out and have a rough idea of what the green is doing. Again, cool view looking back over, and I guess we're coming... So the first loop is round out here. Okay. And we got water coming in, which is new, but I don't mind that. I think that's the kind of resort course thing working. Right, it's a par 5 with a good amount of danger. I don't think I'm reaching the water. There we go. Part 1 complete. Again, like the space you've given this one. I feel like the green just needs a little something around it, though. The moguls are interesting, but they might need to be a little bit more severe or some rough rounder. And part of that is because it's been really narrow in lots of the areas so far. And there's been lots around the green, be it bunkers or the little stone walls or what have you. So suddenly going to this is a big change. I think you can, whenever you know that you've got a big change coming, I try to work up to it and kind of, transition as nicely as you possibly can. I'm assuming, did we want... Yeah, I think surfacing around here could be neater as well. Whether you do the fairway and then sculpt the land around it, or sculpt and then do the fairway, but you've got bits where the fairway's going into the water, bits where it's not. Just because they're going to be, if a ball's rolling slowly down here, it's going to stop in light rough. Slowly down here, it's going to go in the water, and you want that consistency, really. As ever, anyone in chat, do leap in with your own comments as well. It's not all about me. 33 minutes for 9 holes might be a record. There's a shot. It's a fun, risky approach. I have lots to say on this one. Oh, thought we had it. This is all good. Great scorecard from the first 9 holes. Okay. Yeah, here's another one where it kind of feels like the fairway was placed and then the bunkers maybe came on later. Just, they feel like a lot of framing and maybe wrong. I partly say this because I don't love the S-bend fairways, because it really kind of cuts your options down. Like, I'm hitting driver and either I can carry this and not run out here, or carry and not run out, carry and not run out, or lay up to here, or then we've got the same area here. Just, it also visually looks less clean than, say, a fairway that was coming and just working all the way up here and then round. I think sightlines off the tee generally would be something I'd have a little look at. Not because like they're not bad, but I think you can clean up a few things. I like the elevated green. We haven't done 3-tiered back to front, so that works nicely. I think I've got a good club as well. A little short. Works well. Again, the grasses, when they work really, really well. But then areas where we haven't done them feel really empty. So a little bit of that consistency of planting. Are we okay? This makes another different style of bunker and not sculpted. I don't know what's gone on with that, but yeah. Okay. I don't really know about that bunker. I'd have lost it or redone it or something. It just feels unfinished, and like the fairway going back into here is really kind of clunky. And you're doing this, and this looks really nice. I also like, yeah. I'd have just lost that bunker, I think. I assume I can potentially hit the rock. Yeah. Okay. And who knows where we're going? Probably in the bunker. In the bunker. Oh, no. Okay. I don't really understand why the bunker isn't sculpted. I guess my other comment on this one is I don't see a ton of danger in going for it, although I guess I have to curve it around the corner a touch. But I'd want a bit more of an incentive to lay back, partly because I thought the pitch shot on would have been quite a cool one and looked well. Okay. We got the waist bunker, and then we can play... This one's nice. So we can play out here and we get the angle, but we get a longer shot. Or we can play here and we get a shorter shot, but we take it on sideways. I think the idea works nicely. I think bunker shapes, again, we've gone kind of different. I'd want that back to the pot bunkers from hole 3. I think consistency is a major thing on this one. Additionally, I'd probably straighten up your fairway shape out here a little bit more to give me an option to lay up more over here. And, oh, I see. Okay, finally, last little one. If you're ever going to cut splines into a green, you need to lose fringe the whole way around. Otherwise you get this, and it just messes up all of it, and it looks really awkward and difficult. If you look at sandbelt courses, none of them, which do have bunkers cutting into greens, none of them ever have any fringe, and that's kind of the reason why. I think this one we want to play down here. And that way we're kind of taking away the risk of hitting at this bunker so much. Oh, no. Well, that was sadly predictable. No idea what the swing's doing. I like these bunkers at the back. And I like the position. I really like the planting around them. It's just that consistency thing. And like there's that balance to find. I remember because I definitely fell into this trap with my first major contest course. There's a difference between having variety and having consistency, and there's a real balance to find. You want that variety, but within the kind of general concept of your course. Like you want all of these different ideas to keep the player engaged, but you also want them to fit together. And I think there's parts where these haven't totally fitted together. I also, and this I also think you probably need to take a bit more time in just smoothing things out generally. The waste bunker stuff is fine, but I think taking more time and getting it, like, absolutely critiquing this view, so like you can see that the land moves up and then comes down, and the sculpting is kind of... I'm trying to word it right. So sculpting around here is awkward, I would say. It raises up right in front of the sideline. We probably want that a bit flatter, or like everything flowing with the general land movement. It's kind of all flat and then dips down, and like this area is really heavily sculpted and this bit isn't. Additionally, I don't think these rocks necessarily fit, and like stuff like that. I think just detail work could probably be a focus as well. And I suspect that partly comes from doing 2 courses in the same window, which, yeah, I'd never advise. Again, solid par 3 though. Like, what this is doing, we've got that little shelf at the front, so we can use that to kind of work it towards there. The bunker low, I think the spline bunkers generally have been... They haven't worked. They probably play as intended. They could look a little bit neater. I like the green shape. I like the way this bunker cuts into the front here. The other thing you can do with spline bunkers, it takes time, but you see how it's gotten all ragged here. You kind of then got it really smooth up here. One thing you can do is set spline width to 0 and just do loads of little tiny splines and loads of tweaks. You can't get it as ragged as this, but you can get it closer. And I think that would help your transition as well and help everything tie in together a bit neat. I mean, I like that all I can see is rocks and things like that. Okay. Right, so we've got the hog's back thing. This is definitely somewhere we don't want to miss. Ooh. This might be a favourite hole. I like the hog's back and how that can kind of manoeuvre us one way or the other. I still think the cart path's probably hindering more than it's helping, but that's okay. Okay, so that kicks us out here. Land movement here probably needs to be toned down a touch, but I like that I've got to think about how the ball's going to react off here. The one thing that I would have done with this hole really is just given a bit more fairway if you don't want to go for it, because at the moment the options are, well, I'm go for it and take on the risk around the green, and if you don't, well, what then? Well, that's as much risk, if not more. Comes back to the same as that short par 4 earlier. That's as much risk. That's more risk. That's more risk. That's more risk. Is my options essentially boil down to, do I want to hit a sand wedge to here and then hit a longer third shot? So can't hit much further than that, or I get kicked into the heavy rough by this. Or may as well go for it. So you kind of force my hand anyway. And it doesn't matter if I miss, because I was going to miss if I laid up, so I might as well miss down here. You want to give, like, contrary to what it might seem, risk reward is often built off having really, really appealing layup options so that people don't have to go for it. If you force their hand into going for it, then it takes away the risk element, because you're screwed either way. There we are. And again, really cool green site. Like when they're banked into the foothills, and these little foothills are nicely planted, and the bunker textures work, it works really nicely. I get what we're doing here. It just feels a little out of character, given that everything else is really flat. And then it raises up. It just feels like this is land they kind of forgot to flatten. So I think it's, again, about tying things in. I like what we're doing. If we play too far out to there, we get an awkward stance and we get a randomness. I'm all for all of that. It's kind of how you accomplish it. And then I think about taking this on, and here I think the kind of cut the corner and maybe run out of space, encouraging you to hit a draw. I think that works really nicely. As is, I'm going to be playing a 3-wood, and it's short enough that I can do that. same kind of things with sightlines. Like the waste bunkers are kind of here, but it all looks a little bit messy because I can't really see as much of it as I would like. And that detail work on the T would be a thing. Right. A little bit of a crowned pin again. Big fall off here. Yeah, I can, like, similar to some other greens, like the sculpting's gone a little bit steep here, which is why this fairway looks a touch awkward where it is. I think it will play as you want it, it's just smoothing stuff out. That might be good. I mean, the greens have been absolutely playable. You just want to tidy up a few things. So another good example is this putt. And this is the sort of thing that until someone points it out, you probably don't see. I'm within 20 feet and I've got a triple breaking putt, which is going down here. By the way, the low point here is somewhere between my feet because this one's coming this way and this one's coming this way and this one's coming here, which is some slightly awkward sculpting. Got it running this way, we've got it running this way, we then got it running off and here. Try to have some consistent slopes in mind with your green and make everything work towards that. It takes a lot of time, but it's so worth it. And it doesn't make a difference because most people, like playing wise, it doesn't make a huge difference, I would say. But you will really notice it when you start getting it right and you'll avoid some awkward stuff. We have an eagle. Okie doke. I'm trying to think. We've definitely had one par 3 that's played off this kind of side slope idea, the one on the back line. I'm trying to remember no, we haven't had any more than that. I feel like the 2 par 3s on the back are maybe a touch similar. Long par 3. We've definitely got the putt. That's definitely the toughest pin on this one. Yeah, the spline bunkers. This one's the best one of these you've done yet. But I still don't think they work that as well as some of the others. I really like your bunker style on hole 2. I'd have gone with that. Something here-ish. There we go. Green slopes work nicely there. Ooh. That's a pretty spicy pin. I don't really care about the whole legal thing. I think for me that's a fine pin, but it is tough. Certainly not one I'd be comfortable betting probably on 186s, but might be fine. And we finished 3, 4, 5. Excellent. Okay, fence here needs to go. Again, if we're putting stuff in front of the fairway, like rule number 1 on your sightline must be, should I see the fairway and bunkers? Can I see the fairway and bunkers? And here we can't see really any of it. We also need to hit driver. We need to hit driver. Look how much we've pinched 3-wood. 3-wood's really tough to hit versus driver. And I know that everyone will hit driver, but it's like, you've got to allow this play because what if someone mishits their driver? And suddenly we're basically saying, well, if you can hit 300 yards, you are making this hole super easy. If you can't, well, tough luck. There's no way of playing it. Didn't quite get the left-hand side, and I like the way the hogsback would have taken us down to that better angle. Really tough hole here. Yeah, this is nice. One thing, again, if we look at what we should be seeing, there's that whole waste bunker complex that I just can't see from up here. A large part of that would be lowering this gradually so that rather than this bit being flat, it all tapers down to here and then this raises up. And that's the sort of, again, kind of ties in with the detail work comment. That might be it. Not quite. Elements of road hold to that 17th. Didn't escape my eye. And then 18. Okay, and back to the water and capish, and I guess kind of similar to the comments to 9. Okay, we have another. We will have similarities on a couple of other comments, and like I'd hope that you'll see different. You'll see the same things being said in slightly different ways. So we've got a tee shot out to here. If I play 3 wood, that's tighter again. So like that's a big thing. We'll try to hit the drive. So let's assume I had hit 3 wood or I'd mishit my drive, because we talked about on the 9th, not the 9th, the previous par 5, which choked down pretty heavily here. If I'm not going for it, then what? I can't play short here, really. That's if I'm playing short here, I might as well play here and bring more land into play. Can't play here. Can't play here. Can't really play here. That's about the same risk, finally. That's about the same risk. But if I'd played 3 wood, you shrunk me down way low again. I think building in those layup options will make a huge difference to how your courses play. As is, I'm going to smash 3 with this side, and I don't really care, because as long as I don't go right, it's all fine. There we are. So there is strategy to this one, because I could go left, I can't go right. But I think we can do it a little bit neater. Roll up. There we are. Okay, and you said so there's a restaurant over there. Gotcha. And we've got that bunker at the back, which again, I think if you'd gone with this bunker style consistently and really bought into it with the sculpting, you'd want to raise it up or lower the pan a little bit more. I think it could have worked really nicely. It's just the chopping and changing that's made it difficult. Ah, pushed it. Boo. Par 3 is a similar length and way to approach, same for par 5s. Yeah, that'll be an issue. We want variety is key. Yeah. Tip my eye off. Okay. Lots to like. The environment, I think, really good. There's a lot of interesting hole ideas, and I think you brought us back to the lake in interesting fashion. I think some of the planting, if you look at that little picture just there, looks great. And the ideas, as I mentioned, I went through a course like this with my first contest one, where you've got all of these ideas and you try and chuck them down. It's about making them similar enough, and like cohesive would be the word I would use, mainly enough, but then also having variety within those. Things that I would particularly be looking at, say detail work, and that sounds like I'm saying you're not putting enough effort in. It's not necessarily that. It's about really scrutinising certain aspects. Things like sight lines are vital, bunker work and sculpting, and things that I think if you haven't entered a contest before, I can't remember if you entered CC or not, but if you haven't entered major contests before, people don't pick up on that in completed courses. They just tell you that certain things look pretty and what they shot. But actually that will be the biggest thing that I think you need to work on. It's going back to that tee box view, uncluttering, can I see fairway, bunkers, etc. Secondly, it's then like the what if someone can't, which is another huge thing. So if you can't hit driver, what's 3 wood like? Is 3 wood layup zone more forgiving than driver, which is going to encourage me not to hit driver, and then you can ramp up the risk a little bit more. The next thing I think I'd take would be the green sculpting, and just making those work into the land a little bit more. You were in CC, came second in rookie. Gotcha. Okay. I don't know if I got yours for CC. I certainly didn't judge rookie. But yeah, anyway, loads to like. Really enjoyed it. Best luck with the contest, and I'm going to cut this there. I'm going to see whether I can squeeze in another playthrough quickly. I'll be back in 2 minutes if I can. If not, it'll be later on this evening. Hang around for 2 minutes. I'll pop a message in chat. See you later.